Most people believe orcas are the undisputed rulers of the ocean. And honestly, it's easy to see why. They hunt sharks without hesitation. They've been seen taking down whales many times bigger than themselves. Even great white sharks, the predators we grew up fearing, have been known to abandon entire coastlines when orcas move in. So here's the part that doesn't make sense. Scientists started noticing something strange on the bodies of these massive hunters. Perfectly round scars, not random cuts, not bites from another orca, not the jagged damage you'd expect from a shark. These were clean, circular wounds where chunks of skin, blubber, and muscle had simply been carved away. Some scars were years old. Others looked fresh, still healing. That means something had managed to get close enough to one of the smartest predators in the ocean, take a piece of its flesh, and get away. So what could possibly do that? You'd probably expect another giant. Maybe something bigger, faster, even more powerful. But that's not the answer. The animal responsible isn't larger than an orca. It isn't stronger. It doesn't hunt in family groups or overpower its prey. In fact, it's so small that most people would never give it a second look, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. Evolution gave this tiny predator one of the strangest hunting tools in the entire ocean. Orcas aren't its only targets either. The same creature has left its mark on whales around the world, damaged military submarines, and even bitten people swimming far offshore. Tonight, here on Predator Archives, we're looking at the small predator that completely changes the way we think about survival in the ocean. Because out there, being the biggest animal doesn't mean you're untouchable. Sometimes, all it takes is one predator that knows exactly where and how to strike. At first, the answer seems obvious. If an orca has deep wounds on its body, most people would probably blame a great white shark. It makes sense. Great whites are huge. They're fast, incredibly powerful, and built to tear through flesh with rows of razor-sharp teeth. For years, they've been seen as one of the ocean's most feared predators. But when scientists looked at the real evidence, that idea started to fall apart. The truth is, great whites usually aren't the ones in control when orcas show up. Off the coast of South Africa, two male orcas known as port and starboard completely changed what researchers thought they knew about ocean predators. Instead of avoiding great white sharks, they hunted them. Again and again, great white carcasses washed ashore with almost identical injuries. There was a clean opening near the pectoral fin, and the liver was gone. Nothing looked random. It was fast, precise, and almost surgical. Then researchers captured something no one had seen before. A single orca killed a great white shark in just a couple of minutes. It tore open the shark, removed the liver, and swam away as if it were routine. After that, something even more surprising happened. The great whites didn't fight back. They left. Many abandoned their usual hunting grounds for weeks, sometimes even months, simply because orcas were nearby. And orcas have another advantage. They've figured out one of the biggest weaknesses sharks have. By flipping a shark upside down, they can trigger a natural state called tonic immobility. The shark becomes almost completely helpless, giving the orca all the time it needs. So if great white sharks are running from orcas instead of hunting them, they can't explain the strange circular wounds found on these animals. The same goes for tiger sharks and hammerheads. They're impressive predators, but they don't match the evidence either. That means we're looking in the wrong direction. If even the ocean's biggest sharks aren't responsible, then size isn't the answer. The real clue isn't the predator itself. It's the shape of the wound. The wounds on these orcas don't look like normal bite marks at all. They're almost perfectly round, sometimes slightly oval. The edges are clean, and the middle is scooped out, like someone literally cut out a plug of flesh. And that's exactly what happened. These injuries aren't just scratches on the surface. They're missing chunks of skin, blubber, and muscle. Some of them take months to heal, which tells you they aren't minor wounds. The more researchers looked, the stranger the pattern became. One study documented more than 120 individual orcas carrying nearly 200 of these scars. And this wasn't happening in just one place. The same marks showed up on orcas living from the Arctic all the way down to Antarctica. At first, that made the mystery even bigger. But then scientists noticed one detail that changed everything. The orcas living year-round in the coldest polar waters mostly had old, healed scars. Fresh wounds were actually pretty rare. That meant they probably weren't being attacked where they spent most of their time. Instead, they were picking up these injuries somewhere else. The most likely answer? During migration. As orcas traveled through warmer, tropical and subtropical waters, something was waiting for them. Something that didn't need to chase them, overpower them, or fight them head-on. It just needed the right opportunity. That small clue completely changed the investigation. Now, researchers weren't looking for the biggest predator in the ocean anymore. They were looking for an animal that lived in warm water, came close at the right moment, attacked quickly, and left behind the exact same circular wound every single time. And that's when the real suspect finally started to come into focus. Because the animal responsible wasn't one anyone expected. It was small enough that an orca probably wouldn't even see it as a threat. So the next question is the one that really matters. What kind of animal is small enough to be ignored, but has jaws powerful enough to carve a perfect piece of flesh from the ocean's top predator? So, who was leaving those strange marks? The answer surprised a lot of scientists. It wasn't another giant predator. It was a small shark called the cookie-cutter shark, or Isistius brasiliensis. Compared to an orca, it looks almost insignificant. You'd never expect something that small to leave scars on one of the ocean's most powerful hunters, but that's exactly what it does. During the day, this shark stays far below the surface in deep, dark water where almost no sunlight reaches. Then, after sunset, it slowly moves upward. That's when it goes looking for food. What makes it so effective isn't its size, it's the way it's built. The underside of its body is covered with tiny, light-producing organs called photophores. Instead of making it easier to see, those lights actually help hide it. From below, the shark blends into the faint light coming from the surface, making its outline incredibly difficult to spot. By the time another animal notices it, it's already too close. Then comes the part that's almost hard to believe. The cookie-cutter shark doesn't charge at its prey or try to overpower it. It simply attaches itself. Its thick, suction-like lips create a tight seal against the animal's skin. Small upper teeth hold it in place, while the lower teeth do the real work. With a quick twisting bite, it removes a perfectly round plug of skin, blubber, and muscle. That's why the wounds look so clean. That's why they're almost always the same shape. The scars match the shark's feeding method almost perfectly. And here's what really stands out. This shark isn't trying to kill an orca. It doesn't have to. It doesn't need to win a fight. It doesn't need to be stronger or faster. All it needs is a few seconds. It sneaks in, takes one bite, and disappears before the orca has much chance to react. To me, that's one of the smartest survival strategies in the ocean. This isn't a tiny animal trying to defeat a giant. It's a tiny animal that evolved the perfect tool to make the giant's size almost meaningless. At this point, you might think the story couldn't get any stranger. But it does. The same bite marks found on whales and orcas have shown up on something you would never expect: military submarines. Back during the Cold War, several U.S. Navy submarines came back from patrol with mysterious round holes in the rubber covering their sonar systems. Pieces of protective insulation had been torn off cables, leaving important equipment exposed. At first, nobody knew what had happened. Some people even wondered if it was sabotage. But when engineers and marine biologists took a closer look, the damage looked surprisingly familiar. The shape of the holes matched the same circular bite marks seen on whales. The evidence pointed to one unexpected suspect: the cookie-cutter shark. According to the video, more than 30 submarines were damaged in similar ways. Think about that for a second. This tiny shark wasn't just leaving its mark on some of the largest animals in the ocean. It was also biting into machines built to survive deep underwater. And yes, in rare cases, people have been bitten too. One of the best-known cases happened in 2009. Long-distance swimmer Mike Spaulding was crossing deep water off Hawaii at night when he suddenly felt a sharp pain. He had been bitten by what researchers later identified as a cookie-cutter shark. Since then, a few other similar cases have been reported, and they all have something in common. They happened far offshore, in deep, warm water, usually during nighttime swims. That's an important detail. These sharks are not known for hunting people. Human bites are extremely rare. But if you're swimming through the same waters where they normally feed, especially at night, there's a small chance they may mistake you for another passing animal and take a quick bite. That's really what makes this shark so fascinating. It doesn't seem to care whether it's attaching to a whale, an orca, or even a man-made object. If something is moving through its feeding zone and the opportunity is there, it may simply do what it evolved to do. It's another reminder that life in the open ocean follows its own rules, and sometimes the smallest predator leaves the biggest impression. So, what does all of this really tell us? First, orcas are still the top predators of the ocean. Nothing in this story changes that. A cookie-cutter shark isn't stronger than an orca, and it could never beat one in a direct fight. But that's not the point. People often hear the phrase, "no natural predators," and assume that means an animal is untouchable. Nature doesn't work that way. Even the most powerful hunter has weaknesses. The cookie-cutter shark never tries to overpower an orca. Instead, it uses a completely different strategy. It stays hidden. It waits for the right moment. It locks on with powerful suction, uses specialized teeth to remove one clean bite, and disappears before the orca can react. That's its advantage. Not strength, not speed, precision. Honestly, that's one of the biggest lessons nature teaches us over and over again. Survival isn't always about being the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes, it's about doing one thing incredibly well. The cookie-cutter shark has spent millions of years perfecting a single feeding strategy, and that strategy works against animals hundreds of times larger than itself. To me, that's what makes this story so fascinating. The ocean isn't a simple ranking where the biggest animal automatically wins. Every species has its own strengths. Every predator is built for a different job, and every creature, no matter how powerful, has a blind spot somewhere. That's why the ocean still surprises scientists today. Not because the biggest animals always dominate, but because the smallest ones sometimes change everything. And that's exactly why we explore stories like this here on Predator Archives. Because the deeper we look into the ocean, the more we realize that evolution doesn't reward size alone. It rewards the species that finds the smartest way to survive.